Hello, I'm Rob O Donoghue from the Environmental Learning Research Centre at Rhodes University. And in this brief presentation, I'm going to be looking at living heritage and ESD, drawing on the Handprint Care project. And in exploring this, it's an inside together learning action process, as opposed to being, something that is outside and brought in. It is an inside out process towards more just and sustainable lifestyles. Now, the living heritage in the handprint action learning, I draw from South Africa, Mexico, and Japan. And we started in South Africa around isiXhosa and working with Babo Safo's work on weeding for bringing forth wild edible plants in a garden. And the wild green plants are very good for providing iron, which mitigates the problem of anemia in lifestyle. And when Juan Carlos came to visit us and drew on his work with the Nawa, he informed us about the milpa intercropping for fertility and for nutrition in Mexico. And of course, my colleague Sol Shava, an indigenous scholar, immediately saw how we could include pumpkins for food and for weed reduction in the South African setting. And the knowledge started to grow, but there was one area of calcium soaking which was unique to Mexico and had not been adopted in Southern Africa. Again, we went to a colleague in Japan, and he described natto for produced through crop rotation with cereals. And of course, natto is soy, and fermenting soy for protein digestion was really important. And the indigenous scholars that I was working with say, well, fermentation is really important for mineral release and for health. And of course, the science points out that it's useful for phytate reduction as well, which would inhibit digestion. So working with living heritage in these classroom learning situations across these countries produced learning actions for lifestyle and health. And we began to clarify a living heritage schema for handprint care, drawing on the work of Chikamori and Schudel. And what they do is they look at how it's really important for the past, the present, and the future to interact in ESD. And drawing on the Vygotskian work of the four-quadrant model, what we were able to look at was how the past is a useful starting point for living heritage work, the present, where it comes to light, and the future sustainability comes into the mix then. And what Chikamori provides us is this rather complex-looking model, but it's actually really quite straightforward when you focus on the student and how it's really important to explore how human activities out of the past have produced the present. And for living heritage, story sharing and living heritage action learning can be brought in to begin to explore what is and what is not, drawing on Ingrid Schudel's work, and then using this to do depth inquiry in the situation that we are faced with. And then imagining or reimagining the future, what could be and what should be, then enters the game through design solutions and change challenge assessment. So there's a pedagogical pattern approaching here that allows us to explore practically what can be around concerns. So if we go back to the model of the four quadrants and center the concerns, then we're able to see how heritage practices can lead to depth inquiry and design solutions and change challenges. And this allows us to begin to see how important it is to be able to work with living heritage and to do this across the globe. And when we got back to looking at indigenous knowledge and indigenous knowledge practices, ES3 through living heritage together as a practical handprint approach, we noticed could enable us to touch the past in our memories to reimagine the future, flying on the wings of imagination. And of course, this comes from the famous South African storyteller, Ina Nhlope, who epitomizes the indigenous living heritage pedagogies of actually learning through story and learning through doing things together in everyday life. And here are some references that you might find useful to explore some of these ideas in more depth.